It's in the channel description. We're all fighters here because we've all faced some version of adversity and come out on the other side. The proof of that statement is that you're watching this. You're alive. And odds are good that if you have the luxury of watching content on the internet, there are other things that could be considerably worse for you. I have found that it is worth it to look back on your particular brand of adversity, the walls you have overcome already, so you can capitalize on them to overcome other walls you're currently facing. Everybody has something that seems to bounce off of them as though they're Teflon, while simultaneously having something else that withers them to a heap, or, at a minimum, causes them trepidation that can freeze them into inaction. I have also found these nuances are largely, if not solely, based on experience and conditioning. That's great news, because it means that there are very few obstacles in your life, real or imagined, that you cannot overcome with practice. I use myself as an example, provide 3 steps to understanding your wall, and 3 steps to help you overcome your wall. I once dated a girl who claimed that the hungrier she got, the pickier she got. Meaning if, heaven forbid, she missed a meal, then the following one needed to be of higher quality. I'm not sure I ever witnessed her missing 2, and considering we were barely making ends meet as it was, as we lived together for a while, it's a certainty we would have gone broke in short order. To be fair to her, her parents were always of means as she grew up and she went through childhood wanting for nothing. Nothing. Her first car, brand new, was purchased for her. She was put through school, her parents paid for it, and she was subsidized when she and I weren't necessarily making ends meet, to name just a few examples. Toward the other end of the spectrum, I was one of 3 brothers growing up with a single dad. He had the same job his entire life, worked 53 years for a paint company and ran a store for at least 45 of them. It paid a mediocre salary, probably just below median income for the area, but considering his lack of knowledge in the fine art of finances and raising 3 raccoons on his own, we wanted for a lot. A lot. Specifically, food. Then, after we all got kicked out of the house when I was 18, I was homeless for the better part of a year. Side note, my dad isn't to blame for the homelessness. I made poor choices. In the end, his assertion that we weren't allowed to move back in forced me to come up with a plan to get on my feet. This is obviously not a common practice anymore, though people could do worse. One of my best friend's dads used to say, "You'd eat the ass out of a skunk if you were hungry." That came to mind a lot when I was never sure where and when my next meal would come from, and I always appreciated the succinctness and accuracy of that statement. So one of many reasons this girl and I broke up was because I had a difficult time refraining from being furious at her insane claims on what she needed when she was hungry. So difficult that I, in fact, did not refrain, and she got to hear about how spoiled she was on occasion. But the point of the story is, as you might imagine, that I have no feelings about being hungry. I know plenty of people that have many feelings about being hungry. Most of them are unproductive, irritability, distraction, even anxiety. This is a wall I've already had no choice but to face and overcome, and did so over a fairly significant period of time. There were no thoughts about my blood sugar levels, no concerns about allergies, and there certainly were no egregious claims that I needed a prime rib from Morton's Steakhouse because it had been too long since I'd eaten last. There were only calories. This is a pain I'm willing to sustain, mostly because I've already had to when it wasn't my choice. But also because I have learned from the experience and have applied self-awareness to know the difference between real hunger and my body or boredom deciding it's snack time. We all likely have something like this kind of experience, though it doesn't have to be as drastic and certainly could be much more difficult. You might deal well with extreme inclement weather because you grew up in an area where it was much harsher in general, like in the desert or where it snows 10 feet high. Maybe traversing a few miles by your own power isn't a big deal to you because you've participated in, and therefore trained for, marathons. You could have had a job where cold calling was integral to the role, so making contact with strangers doesn't even flag on your radar anymore. Perhaps you were a refugee fleeing from a war-torn country, so any version of freedom is welcomed. Conversely, you might have something that you find extremely difficult that others find easy. You might even know on some level, perhaps a logical one, that there really isn't anything about the action or choice that should be so hard. Speaking publicly is always among the top fears, yet there is no tangible physical danger that is imminent in that act, unless you're leading a coup. People fear snakes and bugs, the large majority of which are in no way dangerous to humans. What about people trying to lose weight that are in a constant battle with themselves? They might know exactly what they need to do, yet just can't overcome this wall. Allowing for the small possibility that you may be facing a wall that no amount of conditioning is likely to help with, like the aforementioned war-torn country, most of the obstacles that most of us are likely to face in our lifetimes can be answered or overcome with conditioning. Here are 3 steps to understanding your wall. Step 1. The first step is really identifying what it is about your challenge that is causing you to be stuck. Do you have emotional ties to food? Do you just not know what to do when it snows? Have you ever even spoken in front of a group? Do you have a bad experience with a snake? Sometimes it requires thought, discussion, and exploration to get to it, but there's value in narrowing down to the core of the issue. Step 2. The second step is noting how it ties to your self-image. Do you just think of yourself as the type of person who, fill in the blank, struggles to lose weight, isn't a people person, doesn't deal well with snakes? This step is crucial and is worth reading as much as you can on the topic. There will also be a future video on this subject. Step 3. The third step is to decide what your desired outcome is. Once you've made the decision to change or overcome your obstacle, the rest is focus and dedication. Once you've identified and feel you understand your wall and why it's there are 3 things that can really help with overcoming whatever your wall is: persistence, practice, and knowledge. Number 1. Persistence is simply the choice to carry on even though it continues to be difficult. Nothing more. Nobody's telling you that it's not going to suck. Just accept that it will likely suck and keep going anyway. Number 2. Practice the skills you want to learn, the behaviors you want to emulate, and persist through not being good at it at first. Refer back to the point about it sucking. I often quote a friend who reminded me that practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice can make perfect. So always just do your best, calibrate, and keep trucking. 3. Knowledge, you might think, is about knowing all you can on the subject. And while I would agree that is highly valuable, what I think can be even more compelling is knowing that somebody has done this before, with fewer resources than you and with larger obstacles to overcome than you're facing. Know that somebody has paved the way for you and their story is likely a Google search away. Get to know them and their story. Wring it like a bar rag for every drop of motivation and example you can, and apply it to your efforts. Your wall was once their wall, and they've already scaled it or crashed through it. Find out how. So much success today can be obtained by watching how someone else achieved it. The principle. Everything we face that is difficult can be overcome by conditioning and desire. One thing that might help you overcome your wall is a plan. If you'd like to see my simple and straightforward method of achieving whatever you want, watch How to Accomplish Anything, an overview. Thanks for watching the video, and please be sure to subscribe for more like it. Click on the notification bell to be alerted to new videos.